Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Reel Debaters podcast. I am Michael Petrow. Hello, listener. This week on the show, I step into the special features portion of what we do here. Special features is our bonus content. This is where the interviews happen. This is where the live events happen and all those fun things. So I get to sit down and do another interview with Manitoba-made director Sean Garrity about his new film, End of Sex. Just finished its theater run. So stay tuned. You will be able to see this, and I promise you, you will enjoy the shit out of it. What's this movie about? It's about a couple who send their kids off to a winter camp for a week and try to inject some passion and sexual adventure back into their relationship. And it's a little nugget of knowledge. One of Sean's first films, My Awkward Sexual Adventure, starring both these two, Emily and Jonas, premiered at TIFF 10 years ago. And then last year, their follow-up film also premiered at TIFF 10 years to the date, which is pretty fucking interesting. Sean, Emily, and Jonas, man, they make some fun stuff. Sean and Jonas write and figure shit out together, and Emily just zhuzhes everything that she does. You know her from Schitt's Creek. Come on now. So that's what we're talking about this week on the show. Yeah, that's about it. If you want to follow us and you want to get in the world of the Debaterverse, the easiest way to support this show is at the end of it, if you like what you heard, subscribe in your podcast player. That is it. That is all, man. Just subscribe. It's free. It's easy. And we'll give you a chuckle each week. We'll die trying. That's for sure. So whatever podcast player you're hearing this in right now, just smash that like or follow or subscribe or stalk or whatever button it is. Just hit it. And that's it. That's all. But if you really want to get into it, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are the four we prescribe to for social media. Bad prescription. But either way, at RD Podcast Shorts on YouTube, the Reel Debaters Podcast, that's where the 30-second to minute clip rolls of what we do here are. So if that's your jam, go there. Instagram, Twitter, and Reel Debaters Podcast on Facebook. All that stuff is where we tell you what we're doing, when we're doing trivia, when we're doing a live show, when we're out and about in the world. So at Reel Debaters Pod on Twitter and Instagram, all the spelling is R-E-E-L, R-E-E-L, and then the Reel Debaters Podcast on Facebook. And that's the Debaterverse. And then there's a little link in the bio that lets you get into the world of everybody on the show. There's 8 of us, if this is your first time. So there's Ian and Diamond, who do stuff on TikTok. Ian and Diamond is the unofficial mascot of the Reel Debaters. She's this lovely one-eyed Labrador who is just a ball of cuddles, and his stuff's on there. Jimmy and Martin's comedy, Mark's comic book collective, Charles's nerdgasm stuff, Emily's dodgeball. We all have a thing. So if you want to be a part of that thing too, hit the link in the bio. But yeah, the Reel Debaters Podcast. That would be awesome if you subscribed to us in your podcast player right now. I'll shut up. That's it, guys. That's all I got this week. Enjoy Sean Garrity. Watch out for the End of Sex. It should be coming to a streaming platform in the future. I'm going to bet Super Channel first if my gut from previous bets will pay off. Stop talking about my gut. And yeah, but keep it on your radar. You're gonna laugh. You're probably gonna shed a tear. You're gonna look at yourself. That's what Sean does. He's so good at making you look inside of who you are while you're watching one of his films. And yeah, I will cue that reel. And you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everybody, to the official space section of the chart.
I wrote the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Sir, you're out of order. Out of order. I show you out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Reel Debaters Podcast. Welcome back to the show. Hello, listener. This is one of my favorite parts of the show. This is special features. This is an interview with Sean Garrity. Hello, Sean. How you doing today?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. He's here to talk about his brand new film, The End of Sex. And I was one of the first people, maybe not one of the first people, but one of the very few people who got to test screen it with you.
Among the first.
Yeah. That was first of all, that's such a cool thing because I was like, I've never seen this side of filmmaking before. So for you to be like, this is going to get added here, and then I'm like, this is so interesting because this is the raw cut of a thing. No polish, no zhuzh.
No.
Right?
Definitely not.
This is a standing place for this and this scene. And then when I watched it again last night, I was like, there's all those things I didn't get to see. All the graphics you said were coming in.
Right.
It was so much fun to see both sides of it. And we're here to talk about how it all started, working with Jonas, working with Emily, your partner in crime, Jonas, for Pete's sake. What, third film?
Oh,
fourth?
Seventh,
I think. Holy moly!
Yeah, I think because we just actually got back from premiering the film in Dublin and Glasgow, and so we did a whole bunch of interviews. And he kept saying 7th, so I'm assuming he did his homework. I'll trust him on that.
Jonas, you're right. 7th film.
7th film.
And I have a question about that too. I compare the two of you to you're my Depp Burton comparison.
Oh, really?
With lighter themes and less makeup,
Yes,
like I said.
I was gonna say Depp Burton. Is there not a better? You didn't go for Scorsese, De Niro.
Well, I didn't. Okay, you're the score. Is he De Niro though?
No, definitely not. He's also not Johnny Depp. That's just mean.
So let's get into it here. End of Sex. How did this all start?
We made a film, as you know, called My Awkward Sexual Adventure.
Fantastic.
10 years ago. And where the film did surprisingly well. Like, no one was more surprised than we were by how well it did. And thereafter, everybody was like, will you make another sex com? Would you do a sequel specifically? We want a sequel. There were Americans and some Canadians and these really aggressive Germans who, flash forward, bought The End of Sex.
Yes.
But who were like, we want you to make a sequel. And we kind of, we talked about it because we were like, man, there's money here. This is, that never happens. Usually you come up with an idea and then you have to convince everybody to give you money. This was like the money was there if we wanted to. If we wanted to write a sequel. And so we talked about it and like, what would it be? And, and we talked to Emily about it, and Emily was not very excited about the idea. And the more we talked about it, we're not very excited about the idea. Ultimately, I think we decided that we had said everything we wanted to say about that. And that sex comedy wasn't really a genre that we felt we wanted to explore anymore. We thought we, did it. And so we had some other stuff that we pitched these guys, the Germans and these other people. We were like, how about this one? This one's kind of sex comedy like. And they
adjacent.
They were like not interested at all. But one of the things that we had started to build while we were messing with different, could this be a sequel? Could that be a sequel? Was something that we called Ménage à Trois, and it's kind of the seeds of that film are still in the threesome sequence of End of Sex, right? So that was the whole film. And we worked on it for a bit, and very quickly we realized it wasn't enough for a whole film, and so we kind of built out some other sequences, and over the years we would return to it now and again. But ultimately, there was a point at which we just kind of moved on because we thought sex comedy wasn't something that we wanted to explore anymore. So fast forward to, I guess, September or October. It was October of. So we shot this 2022, so it would have been 2021.
It's all a haze, man.
Yeah, so like October of 2021, pandemic.
Yeah,
right?
Thick of it.
And this company called Vortex that usually makes TV movies, Hallmark movies, Lifetime movies, but they're filmmakers at heart, and they like to do one quote unquote real movie every year. It's like a treat for themselves, right?
Sure, yeah.
They contacted us and they said, "Hey, you guys, we like your work." The guy Justin Rebello in charge of the company had bought my film Zoe and Adam when he worked at Movie Central, I think.
Okay.
And they sort of said, "Do you have anything that you might, want to make with us? Like something that you're developing that, you're looking for funding on?" And again, it's a phone call that you never get, right? So we were like, "Oh man, of course we do. Of course we do." And we called each other. We were like, what do we have?
Right?
Yeah, what do we have? We started looking through our old projects, and it's funny that Jonas was like looking through all the most likely projects, ones that we had developed, and he said, we should do your project, The Masturbators, because I have one called The Masturbators that I wrote.
Love that title.
Me too. And I said, "Oh, that's so interesting," because I thought the one that you were kind of the head writer on, Ménage à Trois, was kind of a better bet. And we talked about those two projects and realized that Ménage à Trois was a little further along in terms of its structure. It was no longer called Ménage à Trois at that point because we moved off of that as the main thing. And so we took it to Vortex and we were like, "How about this?" And they said, "Okay, great. We'll do a little 2-week update rewrite thing because it was
punch it up a bit."
Yeah, well, it was also old, right? Technology changes everything, and our relation, the way we relate to one another, and the way that we can contact one another, and that so that all had to change.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, we had to update all that stuff. But essentially, they called us in October to say, "What do you got?" And in December, I was in Hamilton scouting locations because we shot it in January.
Wow, that's a fast track.
Very fast.
Holy shit.
So that's kind of how it came about. It's a single source of money. Just Vortex funded it, and like American studio style, except divided by 1,000 in terms of how much money.
For sure. So the aspect of the story is a sex comedy. Not just any old sex comedy, though. The end of Sex is literally the story itself. We've got a couple. They found themselves at a point in their life when they send the kids off to camp, and then they want to reignite the passion in the bedroom. Do you feel this is kind of something that was a gamble, considering all of the elements of the film itself? Talk about real life scenarios. These are things that people go through.
Yeah, no, actually, I think that's the stuff that we love to watch. The more real you can make. So originally, the film that we were working on way back, they didn't have kids, and they actually weren't married yet. And it was just a couple that had been together for too long and was looking for a way to spice things up. And I kind of felt like there just wasn't there. It was missing a lot of the key drivers that I think a film needs to be engaging. And so we eventually got to a place where I was like, what if they were parents and there was a camp and it gives us a countdown.
Yeah.
Because the kids go away to camp and they're going to be back in 7 days. And it gave us a great opportunity for the parents to twist themselves into knots and feel like, oh my God, if we don't solve this in 7 days.
Yeah, they're under the wire.
Right. Then, maybe we'll get a divorce, or maybe it'll be the end, and maybe the kids will come back to a broken family or whatever. Right. And so I thought that gave it a lot of the elements that it needed. But then additionally, it also gave it a real sense of, we would talk to people and say, we're developing this show, and they'd say, what's it about? And we give them the one sentence pitch about parents, kids away, trying to, have sex in every room of the house while their kids are gone, and discovering that they're no longer 28 years old. And like every parent that we pitch that to is like, oh my God, that's my life.
After seeing it, and like, I'm kidless, I won't have any. I immediately thought of parents out there and like the squirmies that you can get when you start to see just a shred of accuracy in that scenario. And I think everybody, like, the theme of sex in the bedroom, sure, but it's time. It's getting used to people. Like, you explore a lot more than just two people not having sex. It's the outcomes of those things, right? Lack of intimacy, the pigeonholing themselves into just being the friends, right? Mm-hmm. Like, these are things that, you've got end of sex on the nose, but underneath it all, it's more. Were you trying to go this deep? And as funny as the themes are, you were like, I want to tell a story. I want there to be some real emotion here.
Definitely. And, I think Jonas and I often, when we work together, we have this goofy little thing that we say, that we've started saying, which is that Jonas brings the zany and I bring the painy, which is this stupid. But essentially it's a little glimmer into how we work in terms of contributing ideas. He's a great architect of big, hilarious, broad, embarrassing situation. Like, if you think about the film, the big, funny set piece scenes are all Jonas.
Okay.
Right? But then I'm much more interested in,
heartache.
Yeah, and
awkward.
Well, but also I think you follow characters through to the end and you root for them.
Yes.
If you see their vulnerability and you see their flaws, and they're also your flaws and your vulnerability, and we kind of connect to them in that way, it makes a film ultimately more of a journey that you want to be on. And so that's kind of what I thought was interesting to sort of bring to it. And this realization that relationships change, that, I came at it from one angle and Jonas came at it from another angle, but it was essentially the same concern, that we kind of, I think in many ways, live in a society where we are told that you get together, you have fireworks, you're having sex all the time, there's romance, it's deep. And when that starts to fade, you go and see a marriage counselor or a sex counselor or something because something's wrong, right? I spent a year living in India when I was just after high school, as we talked about.
Yes.
And there, where the arranged marriage is more the common thing, they think that idea is ridiculous, right? They're like, how could you possibly have a relationship where the sex and the fireworks last forever? That's fantasy.
It is.
Right? And in a way, it's kind of a more, I'm not going to say it's a more mature society, but it's a different way of looking at it that makes you kind of go like, oh, that's an interesting, because they're kind of right.
Well, their marriages are about two families prospering and moving forward and having a life. Their marriages aren't about lust and love and passion, and like save that for us in the West or the Italians, right?
Well, yeah, I don't want to go too far down a road about how much lust and Indians, because we did sell them My Awkward Sexual Adventure. So they bought it. So,
so it's subtitled
in Hindi. No, they're remaking it. Actually, is what they're doing.
That's right. You were telling me about that.
Remaking it in India.
That's awesome.
But all of that to sort of say, I think that there is something that I'm very interested in about how relationships change and how we have to accept that change, or we can choose to fight that change. But you can't. What you can't do is stop it. Right?
No, you can't.
There's a Japanese movie that I love called Warm Water Under a Red Bridge. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Such an obscure title.
Very much so.
And in the movie, this I think it was the guy who did The Eel. I think it was actually his next film, and he cast the same stars too. And in the film, this couple meets and they have sex, crazy sex the first time they meet, and he lives on this river. And whenever they have sex, she like exudes all this liquid. All this liquid comes out of her, this warm liquid, like barrels and barrels and barrels of it. It's ridiculous. All right. And it flows out of his house into the river and under this red bridge. But of course, as the show goes on and they develop a relationship and things get deeper and there's more security there and there's less of the new and the novelty of a new relationship, the amount of liquid that comes out of her starts to lessen.
Oh, it's a direct. I love that.
And at the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, he's very upset because she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm not doing it justice here. It's a lovely act.
I get the
right.
Yeah.
But he's like, "How come liquid doesn't come out of you anymore? What's wrong with us? Are we broken?" Right?
Said by no one else ever.
Yeah, it's a great film, and it's so in a way dealing with those same, I think, very universal issues is something that I was very interested in tackling in The End of Sex.
Oh, you do, and there's little things that are laid throughout the film. I remember the gnomes is such a perfect time placement to show the stress and the countdown. It's an audience attached device that I remember you talked about, and you were like, do you understand the gnomes? And I'm like, yes, I very much. We need the gnomes. The gnomes need to stay, because as one goes down, one's heart breaks, and it's like, all right, now we're down to 36 hours, 24 hours, so on and so forth. And it's those kinds of things that show change and show time and show the evolution condensed into a nice neat package of an hour and 20.
Yes, something that the Americans do that we don't do as much in our cinema, and perhaps to our detriment when we make films that intend to have more broad commercial appeal, is Americans love the countdown. However you can configure a countdown in a film.
Really?
If you look at American films, I mean, not only thrillers. I mean, thrillers obviously have countdowns, but I mean, they just throw a countdown in wherever they can. It's narrative gold to have a countdown, because it creates a sense. It's like the sports movie. Like, it creates a sense of like
tension, conflict,
increasing, rising stakes. And you less and less time to achieve your goal, and so we all have that inherent sense of like, I got to get this done before the bus comes, or whatever the countdown is, and then of course,
or the meteor strikes the planet,
or whatever it is. But the more complications you throw at your character while they're trying to meet their timeline, of course, the more tension that it automatically generates. So I love the device.
It's such a good device, and you do this. I want to know how many different awkward sexual moments there may have been previous to the ones that you actually shot, like when you guys were writing it and kind of putting it together, because you've got the threesome scene, which we'll get into, which is absolutely brilliant, but then you've got the sex club, then you've got all these moments in the film where they travel through them together. You don't have them going independently. The only time that they're independent is when they're questioning their relationship amongst their peers,
right?
And we all do that. We all go into call your buddy, call your best friend. Like, it's you tell the relationship story so well and so sincere and so simple. Like there's no complications in it. But I am wondering, like, did you guys did you have to rein it in a little bit when you were like, what kind of awkward sexual moments can we give these two, or what we see on screen is that the final product?
No,
we
settled on those pretty early.
Okay,
pretty early in the writing process. We were like, we were like, the second act is going to be, the first act, of course, is like discovering what the issue is, and then saying, let's set this goal for ourselves that we're going to have all these crazy sexcapades. And then the second act is, this episodic. At first, it was very episodic. We worked very hard to have one grow out of the next, to have rising action and stakes going up, and more happening between them emotionally every time to sort of make them less episodic. And I think we had some degree of success there.
It turns into a 24 to 36 hour feel, right? Like it turns into like the last couple days of it blends together is what I'm trying to say without saying it properly.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, way back there was I think there was a scene where one of them was dressed like a schoolgirl, and they got into the school at night and did like a role play thing. Like, and I won't say which one was dressed as a schoolgirl, but
it doesn't matter today, Sean.
But there were a bunch of other things that we sort of auditioned, but pretty early on, I think we settled on this was going to be the main course of the second act was going to be these three pieces. I think the later writing was more focusing on the through line and the relationship and the pain and what was at stake and the context and bringing the kids in and and the ending. Ironically, we wrestled with that until really the very last minute.
In regards to the setup of the two of them meeting at the camp they met at, when they were kids, right?
The camp they met at when they were teenagers. Yeah.
Were you playing? What was the other ideas that you were playing with?
Well, no, just in terms of, I mean, Jonas was very interested in them, having mind blowing, fireworks sex at the end, and so they would, and I was like, but wouldn't it be more interesting if? And so I was looking for something different, and he was feeling that ending wasn't working, and so, yeah, in the end, the ending that we have is something that kind of came to us late in the game.
Those kids are great too.
Oh, aren't they? I love those two kids. I think they were just such a pleasure to work with on set.
The montage in the beginning when mom's in one room and dad's in the other, and she's like, "Take all the tampons," right? Because like, lo and behold, some girls have their periods when they're 14 years old.
Yeah, that's funny. My wife suggested that joke.
Kudos to her.
Yeah, because it's not something that I would necessarily think of, but yeah, I'm so glad that we got to put it in, because I was like, of course, that's brilliant, and it's right in the world of our comedy, and I think a lot of mothers will be like, yep, had that conversation.
Totally. And also, I only need one pair of underwear because I only have one butt. That's such a great joke.
Thank you.
Is that like something from like one of your kids, or is that a clapback that you like?
No, I think that was something that we just came up with in the, I only have one butt.
It's like, yes, you're actually kind of right. Why don't I only have one pair of underwear? When we think of a romantic comedy, you think of the cookie cutter, right? And in today's society, is it a risk to break away from what people know? Because your sex comedies aren't your dick and fart joke sex comedies that you make. Your sex comedies are full of sincerity and genuine emotion. So were you afraid to break away from this? Did you have confidence that it was gonna go the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I because the more cookie cutter kind I'm not really interested in making those. And so, if the project had become that, I think at a certain point I would have been like, wow, this is just not for me. There's stuff that I'm interested in doing, like everybody, and stuff that I'm not, and also stuff that I think if it had become more of a cookie cutter film, I couldn't bring much to it. Like I wouldn't have my ideas wouldn't have worked in that format, because I don't watch those and I'm not really interested in those. And it's like horror. I don't watch horror. I don't really like horror. Sometimes people are like, you should do a horror. I'd be like, yeah, but I would suck at doing a horror because I don't
my
watch
lane,
because I don't watch them.
Yeah.
And so this kind of thing is the kind of thing that we sort of had to do with it. Now, I think one of the things that I've noticed, which is interesting, now that we've had our first couple of screenings and our first kind of slew of reviews, is that because it is such a standard genre, and because it does elicit such a series of common expectations, people do pass judgment on stuff in the film that actually isn't there. because they're like, well, obviously it's a romantic comedy, so obviously this is what you mean. When you're like, no, if you look at what's there, that's
attention,
actually
motherfucker.
not, that's
Yeah.
not what we mean. But I think we do run that danger, and the fact that we've seen it in the first kind of round of reviews tells me that when we release theatrically, of course we'll see it, much more of it.
Law of averages, right?
Yeah.
Is what it is. I mean, I'm over standard storytelling. I'm over the machine of it, like with what's going on just in cinema with the tent pole and the blockbuster. Like, I'm starting to gas out a bit and finding myself wanting original stories, indies, lighthearted, outside of the box films, and this kind of stuff. I feel this kind of stuff and like happy stuff, I feel, is kind of making its way into the ether. Is that a correct observation, or is?
Oh, well, I think just in terms of like the world, you mean, and what's out there?
What people are asking from their film, from their movies.
Oh, yeah. Who's to say now, man? Like, I mean, no, now that it's streaming and, it's do you remember Jeff Urback? He filmmaker here in the 90s. I think now he's in Saskatchewan.
I've heard that as I research Winnipeg filmmakers, and these names are coming up.
He predicted a future. This was in the 90s.
In the year 2000.
Yeah, he was like, in the year 2000, when we're all driving flying cars, he was like, the future of television is 40 million channels, each watched by one person.
And he nailed it.
Yeah, and it hasn't gone TV channels, but in terms of the streaming, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, I think. Anything that you make, there's somebody out there who wants to see it. Now, can you get it to them? Can you market it and distribute it in a way that they can find it? That's a separate question, and I think that's more difficult than it's ever been. But in terms of is there an audience for a certain kind of work? I think there's always an audience for kind of anything that you would ever make.
Okay, fair enough. Emily and Jonas, you said earlier, Emily was kind of hesitant to do this. Like, just because professionally she was like, I'm going in a different direction with my career, or just coming, like, what were some of the hardships with getting this off the ground and getting it back together in regards to that?
Getting the band back together, yeah. Because we also have the same editor and the same composer, and the happy ending of that story was where when we last left off,
that's what I'm looking for.
10 years ago, sort of Jonas and I were like, do we really have anything more to say on this topic? And Emily was like, no, I don't think I do. And I'm not really that interested. But by the time 10 years later that we were putting this thing together, and I'm a dad and Jonas is a dad, and now we're making it about a couple of parents, and now we found that we did actually have something more to say because
you're the audience.
Right, because and also our perspective is different, and our experience has changed, and our expectations of sex and the role of sex in a relationship has changed. And Emily, similarly, when we reached out to her, she was like, oh, that's so exciting, because she also, of course, has been through a whole bunch and is a very different person than the person that she was in some ways 10 years ago. Luckily on set, she's exactly the same, and the same energy and the same creativity and the same willingness to sort of play and be real in front of camera and make fascinating little choices all the way that just make her performance so interesting to watch. That's all the same, but I think she's quite a different person in her personal life than she was when we made Awkward Sexual Adventure. So she also feels like she's bringing new stuff to it that maybe she didn't feel like she had back then, because we just finished making the other one, right?
Makes perfect sense. What's it like having these kinds of relationships where you're pretty lucky in the fact that you get to work with Jonas as much as you've gotten to work with Jonas throughout your career.
Lucky is lucky the word? I'm not sure that lucky. That's, but yeah, I mean, it is great to, and I do a lot work with people again and again. Ari, who got a CSA nomination for The End of Sex for his score, my composer. I mean, it's I think, similarly sixth film together, sixth or seventh. See, Jonas, he would know. But I mean, I work a lot with people who I can trust, and I know their aesthetic, and I know how their aesthetic kind of fits in with my aesthetic, and we don't enrage each other too much when we work together. Because sometimes, I mean, not the rage, but sometimes there's, you work with people. I've worked with people in all sorts of creative positions where sometimes you just don't, it just doesn't click for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that's not because they're bad or because you're bad. It's just there's something that doesn't quite, I don't know, fit. So I kind of feel like on every film you're sort of auditioning people for these roles. But once you find somebody who you love, then I try to hold on to them and go back to them. I mean, John Gerdebeck edited this film, and I think John Gerdebeck has edited, again, you'd have to check IMDb, but 8 of my films or something, 7 of my films, like he's my guy.
There is an aesthetic to your filmmaking. There is a style to it. There is a beat to it, and I love all your films that I've seen, and I need to go back and obviously watch the ones that I haven't. But it feels like my first film from you was My Awkward Sexual Adventure, and then the title, like, it's so long.
I proposed we never see each other again.
That one, yeah, that one. And through all 3 of these, I've just been like, man, this guy makes the shit that I love seeing. I love seeing real conversations that make me crawl up the back of my chair. For example, you do this thing with these guys, and I don't know how you found it, but there are moments after Ecstasy. So the Ecstasy drop happens and everything's great because everything's great on Ecstasy. And you make sure we all know that. But then the awkwardness of trying to have sex on Ecstasy, which we all know, for being honest, doesn't always work. I got in my head. I started to remember what that felt like in an awkward situation. And how do you pull that out of them? Like, how do you get it to where it's exactly what me, the audience, is going to feel?
I mean, the job of a director on set is to, when the camera's rolling, is to be the audience. And so I feel like if it's working for me, I mean, that's the only measure that I actually have, which is why, some people dig my films and some people don't.
Sure.
But I am lucky enough, and this kind of harkens back to what we were saying before, where I couldn't make this kind of film and I couldn't make that kind of film. I just don't think I could do it. Because ultimately, when I call action, everybody's doing a job. Camera's doing their job, and grips are doing their job, and sound is doing their job, and the actors are doing their job. The only person who isn't doing anything is me. Shh. And I sit back and I watch the movie. And I'm the one person who's watching the movie. Which is why when I call cut, I'm able to say, oh, that worked, or that didn't work, and we got to do it again. But it's just very much of a sense of, I know how I want it to feel. Like, I mean, it's a range, right? I know how I want it to feel between here and here.
Pink with a little yellow.
Yeah, I kind of want to feel it should feel a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and each time the actors take it in a slightly different direction, and so it's slightly different than the way it was before, and each time the camera does something slightly different. They're not robots. And so it feels slightly different every time, and I just keep doing it until I go like, oh, that feels exactly right. Like, that just feels like a movie that I really want to watch. Great. Moving on.
Cut in the can, do it.
Yeah.
Your supporting cast, Wendy, Marlon, and Kelly.
Yes.
Lots of auditions to find these 3 fantastic folks, or did you already know? Did you see tape? Like, how did we build the supporting cast in this?
Yeah, it was COVID, so there was
lots of tapes being submitted.
Lots of tapes, and I it's funny because I sort of said I need to do auditions, and it's weird because there's a movement away from auditions, which I think is dangerous. Dangerous for the kind of films that I like to make.
I would think dangerous, like you can't call that sometimes. Like, it's in room stuff. I'm not a casting director, but I would feel that you need to feel the performance as much as you're seeing it, and the webcam dilutes that.
Well, it's not only that, it's the opportunity to work with an actor and say, I mean, one of the things that I do as a director in an audition is an actor comes and they give a performance. We sort of say, okay, let's do this scene and start here, finish there. And I don't give them any notes at all. I just have them read it the way they want to read it, whatever they prepared. And then even if it's the best performance I've ever seen, even if they knock it out of the park and it's exactly what I envisioned in my head, I give them a direction to take it in completely the opposite, make it opposite of what I just saw, right? So if it's really energetic and sharp, I try and get them to bring it down and make it more meditative and darker. And of course, what I'm auditioning isn't the actor. I'm auditioning me. I'm auditioning my ability to get a performance out of that actor.
Interesting.
Right? Because when we're on set, things are going to change, dialogue's going to change, we're going to run out of time or whatever. We're going to have to sort of say, oh, shit, we're going to do this, but now we're going to do this instead. And I need to know that I have a team of actors with me who can respond and who can do that. So you could be the best actor in the world, but if you can't take my direction and my direction is not useful for you, and doesn't help you get to where you get to, then you can't come on board, man.
Sorry, seat's taken.
Because I having done a number of films that I have, I recognize that nothing is going to be like we think it's going to be. It's all going to be stupid and backwards and upside down and on fire, and we're going to be running out of time, and the location's not going to be right, and nothing's going to be right. So, and we're going to have to roll with it and improvise, and I need people who can do that.
And obviously, names here: Lily Gao, Gray Powell, and Letterkenny fan.
Oh yeah,
Melanie. My God, man!
She's incredible, isn't she?
She must have been so much fun to fucking watch.
Oh, amazing!
And it took me a second to realize that Melanie Letterkenny was Melanie on screen, and I'm like, that's an unbelievable 180 turn.
Well, and it's funny because I think she's more famous in the States for Winona Earp. Or Winona
That's
Earp.
right. Yeah, the female Earp.
Yes.
Yeah.
I only watched some episodes when someone was like, hey, we should cast Melanie Scrofano. And I was like, oh, I'll watch some of her stuff.
I didn't even know that. I know the show. I didn't even know she was in it.
Yeah. It's shot in Toronto, or was. I guess they did 5 seasons or something. I think it's really big in the States. I noticed that
Westerns are big.
Yeah, and zombies, and she's like shooting.
Oh, that's
zombies
part of the
and,
okay,
yeah, right. She's the granddaughter of Wyatt Earp, and she's got this magical zombie killing gun. So I'm
gonna watch this now.
It's cowboys and shooting and zombies. How can the Americans not love it? I think they went 4 seasons or 5 seasons.
Did she read for Crazy Friend art teacher originally, or did you ever cast it for something else?
No, we offered her that part.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So she's at a level that you can't. I mean, if we'd asked her, she probably would have. Now that I know her, she's super cool. But we felt that she was too famous an actor to say, hey, would you come in and do an audition? So we had to roll the dice a little, and I had to hope that she was going to be able to. But I watched a bunch of her performances, and I saw stuff that felt to me so authentic. Like, I feel like I have a good nose. Maybe I don't. But I feel like I do for a performance that is improvised. Like sometimes I watch a performance and I'm like, that's not scripted. They made that up.
What how do you what is it that's telling you that?
It's the way that they're not speaking in complete, perfectly composed sentences.
Sure. That
have a poetic concision to them. And there's lots of uhs, and it sounds like real humans actually really talking. Partly you can tell it's like actors in an ensemble come alive when someone's improvising. And that is the thing, I think we talked about this last time, that kind of got me into filmmaking, right?
Yes.
Was as a musician, when someone screws up on stage and suddenly everyone's listening and suddenly everyone's watching each other and listening to each other.
Okay, I got to adjust to this, and bring your vibrato down. Everything changes.
It's this magical moment because you're all improvising, and you can see it in an ensemble cast as well. When someone is suddenly making stuff up, everybody else is listening, and it really feels alive. So I saw some of those moments in some of her work, and I was like, okay, she is good to go with that.
Oh.
And then she was just so incredible on set. I mean, she's a scene stealer. She's always doing something interesting, always.
Yes, she is.
And because it's cinema,
it's a mannerism with her. It's her posture. It's she's telling you something without telling you anything,
and always in the right tone for the scene. But where that in theater might not be a welcome thing, upstaging other actors, of course she's fully aware that in cinema I can just not cut to her if I don't like it.
Exactly.
Right. And so she gives you the option of like, here's something else that could be in this scene. And when it works, I mean, there's that gallery scene near the beginning of the film.
Yes.
Where she
scrotums.
Scrotums. The balls, the scene with all the pictures of balls hanging all over the place.
I got to ask, did that picture change, or did you go to immediately to scrotum? Because
no, that was Jonas wrote that. That's classic Jonas zany writing. Although I will say this, we did, after the art department put up that giant picture of the scrotums.
Whose scrotum was it?
That was the question, right? So we stood around and we were like, is this? And I think it's a goat. I don't think it's actually a human scrotum.
Oh my God.
Sorry, man.
No, it's fine. I just love how the bit of like, how does this make you feel? What is this? It's a scrotum. Like immediately, as soon as the realization kicks in, it's not art anymore.
And it's funny because one of the 1,000 producers, Vortex has many producers.
Yeah.
One of the 1,000 producers on the show, when we were in prep and we were talking about how do we get these pictures,
art department.
And so the art department at the time, it was just the production designer because we were early on in prep.
Yeah.
She was like, I am not sure that I'm comfortable if I have to go out and and so one of the producers spent the evening on Google looking for rights-free images of scrotums, and he came bouncing into the meeting the next day. And you guys were so lucky. There's no end. I was on there for hours, and I was like, "And dude, does your wife does she look at your search history at all?"
No kidding.
After you've gone to, but
Black and white balls.
yeah,
Rights free.
Get some cheesies and a glass of Coke and prepare to spend your evening in front of the internet.
Locking the door, my dear.
There you go.
No, that little stuff that offsets and the honest Marlon's bit of just sharing too much.
Yes.
And going off. Is that on him, or did you guys?
That was always the character as we wrote that character, and
Okay.
that's very much a creation of Jonas. He really wrote a great character who always goes too far. Jonas has a great ability to always go too far.
And you have to rein him in a little bit.
Well, no, I mean, for that character, that's what we want.
Let it go, yeah.
Yeah, everyone's obeying social conventions, and you have this one character that's just that's going too far with everything all the time.
And that's the character we all want to be, right?
He's the guy on the T-shirt.
Yeah, you want to brush your teeth in a diner and say fuck it, right? You just want to be as free as possible, and that guy's living that life.
Totally. And so it was interesting that I struggled a lot with a lot of the different producers because I saw his audition early, Gray, and I thought, oh my God, this guy's incredible. And he's hilarious at this role. I am laughing my ass off watching his tape. And then I brought him in to see if I could throw a bunch of crazy direction at him and it would knock him off his game, and it did not. He got funnier. And so I was like, okay, this is my guy. But, I mean, producers are very interested in putting names in that people recognize.
Sure.
And, to a point that they were like, Instagram followers is a thing. How many do they have? Because that's how
those questions are being asked now.
That's how we attract people to see the movie when it's
Sure.
out in theaters. And so I had to really fight for him because I was like, okay, that's all great on your end because your job is to distribute the movie, but on my end, my job is to make a funny movie, and this guy is hilarious, and nobody can do it as hilariously as this guy can. And so they actually had a couple of name actors, who I will not name in this interview, but who had, who were
We don't care about the scoop here.
who were relatively well known.
Sure, yeah.
Who agreed to come in for an audition because I was so obstinate.
Well, they were pushing.
Well, I was so obstinate. I was like, I will not cast somebody else. They were like, what if
Throw the names at them.
What if we could bring them to an audition and you had a chance to work with them and they were just as funny? What then? I was like, okay, well then, okay, maybe I would think about it then.
Sure.
So they brought a couple of actors in, and I was vindicated. They were not as funny, and so I fought for him until the end, and I was very lucky that the producers in the end were able to sort of say, okay, if that's the guy you want, then that's the guy that you get.
We all identify with Jonas and Emily's characters. I'm sorry they elude me right now because I didn't write them down.
Emma and Josh, man,
Emma
it's almost
and
the
Josh.
same name.
No kidding. That's embarrassing. Let's edit that out, listener. But we identify with them, right? But you also put a bunch of characteristics into all these. You don't throw away your supporting cast. They're all there showing something. And in ensemble cast, it seems that's your jam. You really like having 3 or 4 people making a cacophony of a scene, and it all comes out and looks fantastic. And that's the jazz player in you, I would imagine.
Well, and I'm very interested in the arcs of those characters. I mean, in an ideal world, according to Robert McKee, every subplot should serve a purpose in that illustrates an aspect of our main character that we don't see in their central plot.
A mirror of the character.
Not even a mirror, like a different side of them.
Okay.
Like, you know, Emily or Emma is a certain character in the presence of her husband and her kids, but when she's in her art gallery trying to impress this guy, we see a very different Emma.
She's flirty.
We see that
she's
exactly.
you
We
know,
see a different side of her.
Interesting.
Right? And so this idea that the subplots in a film should serve to make characters deeper and more complicated and more sophisticated and show more sides of them. But then, of course, each subplot ideally should also have kind of a beginning, middle, and an end and plug back into the main plot in a meaningful way, ideally as a big obstacle. And so that it all kind of seems to be driving somewhere. And I'm very much a formalist, as we discussed. And so that's also something that when Jonas and I were working the script that I would bring, and I would say, like, okay, I love this character that you wrote. I love that he says anything that he wants, but he's got to be involved in a very
function.
He's got to be involved in a very specific way in the plot, so that he's adding to and not subtracting from our central kind of drive.
Well, and Kelly does that for Josh.
Absolutely.
And does it in the dirtiest way. I was angry at you for making me realize things about myself, but that the phone call scene, did you guys kind of figure out a couple different ways to convey that, or did you just go right to the manipulation, the gaslighting, like the whole desperate plea, I'll do whatever I want, when he calls her and he's like, I'm having dinner with a work colleague and I gotta go, right? Like, just to leave her, I'm like, asshole.
That scene we really worked a lot on, because when we went to camera with it, we felt it wasn't working.
Really?
So a lot of what you see is improvised, because we sort of thought, this is a weak link. Our main character makes a decision that we are not on board with. While we understand why he makes it, we shake our heads. We go, like, dude, that is the wrong thing to do.
It is a hard right.
Yep.
In that sense, yes, definitely.
And so we were like, how do we justify that, and how do we bring the audience with us, and how do we include them in that? And so there was a lot of workshopping, and Kelly brought a lot to it. And Jonas, everyone was very, very much on board with it. And I was more surprised than anyone when in our first test screenings, I was like, how badly does that part suck? And people were like, no, it works.
Yeah.
I was like, no, but I mean, be honest with me. How badly does it suck? They're like, what are you talking about? It works.
It totally does, because that's what we do, right? We make that phone call. We play the head games. We wait shit out. We don't call for 5 days. Whatever it is, it's that little manipulation tactic that you use when you first meet somebody, so to then use again after, years of marriage. You talk about changing perspectives. Before, that would have worked. Now it's like, what the fuck are you doing to me, Josh? Like, and her reaction is exactly that. Like, you're fucking with me. No, and he sits there and he's like, no, you saw through me. You saw through me. You love me. You know me. And she's like, you're a fucking idiot, though. Like, stop trying to worm your way out of this one.
Well, and I loved Kelly's line that I think Lily came up with on set, which is that everybody born after 1990 is familiar with these very tricks.
When she storms out of the room and she's like, "Don't make the call. Don't make the call." I'm familiar. It's so fucking.
And
true.
if you watch it again, one of the things that Lily and I worked with is we kind of had this discussion of that whole thing that you're talking about, and how for millennials it's a real thing.
It's a communication method.
Well, and how in a way in that situation when you're in that headspace, a phone, like a cell phone, is like a gun in terms of the damage that it can do. And so after we have that discussion, I mean, if you watch the film again, watch how Lily Gao plays it in that scene. She's playing it as though dude is holding a pistol.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you doing with that? Put that
thing
down.
Drop the gun.
Put that thing down.
You're totally right.
She's hilarious. She's so funny when you realize that's how she's playing it. It's great.
Yeah, you can send nudes. You can say the wrong thing. Your phone is an atomic bomb waiting to ruin your life.
It totally is. It totally can be used when you're in that. And she recognizes, as the character, she looks at him and she recognizes the headspace he's in. She recognizes that he's holding
damage
his phone.
control.
Totally.
Oh no, that's the shit. Yeah, I would totally not have noticed that until you mentioned it. Comedy is a short supply these days. It irks people. It puts people's back up against the wall. How do you find navigating this, you and Jonas? Is there things you have to be mindful of when you're making a sex comedy these days so that you don't push people in the wrong way? Is there lines that you were
Yep.
afraid to cross?
Yep. There is some stuff that, I mean, I don't. Some people are like, oh, the world, it's too woke and cancel culture and blah blah blah. And I'm not entirely against all that stuff. I recognize that big picture, it is a movement that we are engaged in that has great intentions.
Yes.
And I think there are obviously a few people who take it too far, like everybody in every movement. There's always a couple of people who take it too far. But I think in its essence, this idea that we try to minimize, misogyny and racism, and like that's all very good stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
To try and avoid that.
less.
Yes. And so there. We didn't write a lot of scenes that really put the film in danger that way.
No, you didn't. I'm just curious from a perspective of when you're. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, but there was one scene.
Ooh,
though.
tell me. Tell me.
And it was a scene that we talked with you about, I'm sure, because you were in a test screening, because it was giving us trouble. It was near the end of the movie, and there's a scene that happens in a motel room with a sex swing.
Yes.
And originally in the scene, it's two women. And one of the women kind of is very aggressive with the other woman,
Yes.
saying, "Hey, man, we have something, and you have to recognize that." And it gets very physical between them. The way it was originally written, it got much more physical, and one character pushes the other character down in the bed, and the character who gets pushed was kind of afraid, and when we blocked it out on the day, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, as a couple of dudes making this film, we were blind to the fact that obviously sexual assault can happen between anybody and anybody.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be a guy in the room to make it a sexual assault. And we realized that we were making light of sexual assault. And so we were like, okay, let's rework this. And we're on set, right? Like cameras in the room, like we're shooting the scene.
Yeah.
And so we were just like, how do we rework this to get that element out? Because that's not what the film is about. And none of us are on board with the idea that sexual assault should be something that is
No, we
comedy,
don't do that.
right? Like
Yeah,
we don't.
yeah.
And so we reworked it, and we made sure that the character who was the victim of the aggression was not afraid, never afraid, always felt like she was fully in control of the situation. And the other character, we asked Melanie Scrofano to sort of play it in a way that was vulnerable and shy and unsure of herself, but confused. And there's all this series of different emotions that we kind of layered over top.
Yes.
And we were under tremendous time pressure. And I remember giving Melanie this terrible convoluted direction that had like 8 different emotions in it, and I was like, and we're doing the scene as a oneer. We were shooting the whole scene all in one shot, once from one angle, one from the other angle.
Yeah, you're one and done.
And I was like, can you do it? And she just kind of thought about it. She's like, okay, let me try. But because she has this experience working in TV and just 10 pages a day and probably terrible direction a lot from different directors,
You never had the same one twice.
yeah, she was amazing. She gave us everything we asked for. Emily Hampshire actually wept at the end of the scene because of the amazing performance that Melanie gives. And it's not like a particularly emotional performance or anything. It's just it was so specific in order to make the scene work, but not make it what it was when we got in there. If that makes sense. It was like walking on the edge of a razor to make that scene work. And Melanie just knocked it out of the park. We were just amazed by her.
I noticed the change, and when the two of them come to a conclusion with the situation, don't want to ruin too much for you, listener. It's soft, it's sweet, it's a gentle letdown that has humor and confusion.
Yeah,
and she like it's like Melanie's wrestling with every answer that Emily's giving her, instead of the aggression that we'd seen before, where it was like, you're mine.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that's what happens. We have to tell it nice sometimes. We have to be sweet.
Well, because I just think it's, there's a realization that we are having as storytellers that there are certain story elements, like sexual assault, for example, that you can't just toss off in a scene at the end of a movie as like a little joke. Like, if you're going to put sexual assault in a movie, it's kind of...
It needs some context.
Well, that's it. And I think some of those bigger issues are kind of like a Pac-Man. If you're going to throw it into your movie, it's going to gobble up a lot of real estate, and you
Yeah.
have to really make sure that it's contextualized properly. And we, there was a realization on set that day that there's just no room for that in this movie. So we got rid of it. And interestingly, for that scene,
It works better, man. Because
because
when you meet them, you find out that there is some feelings, that Melanie's character, Wendy, catches feelings, right? And that makes the whole threesome scene even funnier in retrospect, because watching Jonas try to navigate, like, you made the threesome that happens. You did not make the threesome that 13-year-old boys dream of in their heads. And I encourage 13-year-old boys to see this scene, because this is exactly what I imagine happens every fucking time. It is, and I got to ask you, like, that scene's funny, but that scene's also very sexual. How did we get there?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, that scene was very much what was
Menage a trois.
written, because it's Menage a trois, and it was the essence of the film all along. And we're also in an era of intimacy coordinators. Where,
Sharon Bayer, I spoke to the Manitoba one.
Yeah, she's great, right?
Fantastic.
And she...
theater background, TV background, movie background.
And she was trained by the Toronto woman who actually was our intimacy coordinator for that scene.
Oh.
Whose name escapes me at the moment, because she only did that scene, and then all of the other scenes were done by her assistant Mackenzie, who was also fantastic. But as a result, I think there's no improvisation in an intimacy scene. Because actors have to know exactly what you're doing.
It's not 1940 anymore.
Well, that's it. It's and I think there's a sort of a sense that we have come to now that, like, would you improvise a stunt scene with a car crash and guns and knives and people?
That's such a good point.
Of course you wouldn't. You'd have a stunt coordinator and you do it exactly a certain way so that no one gets...
The set is yours. Show me what to do.
Exactly. So in an intimacy scene, similarly, we nowadays are like, here is exactly what's going to happen. And here's exactly what we're going to see. And here's exactly... And so then within that, I think, and I'm so glad that you point out that it's kind of a hot scene, because actors lose a lot of their inhibitions because they're not worried about what's going to be seen and where's this going to go, and if I push it too far sexually, is it going to go to this place that suddenly I'm going to find myself all over the internet?
Yeah,
stills from this movie, but
TMZ in it.
Well, but when you've got an intimacy coordinator, it's not going there, and so that within the moments that you have on the set, you can really throw yourself at the performance 120%, and they do, and that's why it's as hot as it is.
What? It had both sides of my brain going. I was like, ha 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 ha, ho. Right? Like, and I was confused as to what I was feeling. And then as soon as the camera pans over and Jonas is still in his suit, I was like, yes. And then Melanie's right, just passed out on it. And Emily's like, what am I? Like, you've got these 3 different results, and it always ends in catastrophe. Like, it's the most realistic version of a threesome you will ever see, listener. I swear to Christ. But yeah, no, I guess you don't think about it, because before, without the intimacy coordinator, it was director and however closed of a set I guess they felt it required, and then like action and do what you would normally do what you think is, right, as opposed to here's a framework.
Yeah, and specifically, I mean, it is this simple in some sense, in terms of like, what body parts are you going to see in the movie and how much, right? I mean, Sharon Stone is back in the news this week because she's got her version of what happened in Basic Instinct, and that would never happen today.
No,
because you have these discussions with actors about exactly what is going to be in the film and what is going to get seen. If you accidentally film something else, you can't put it in the film.
Yeah.
Right? And so that gives actors, I think, a greater sense of agency, but also a greater sense of confidence that they can really throw themselves at these scenes.
Here's how far I can go.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go there.
Exactly. I know that this is what's happening, and we're not going as far as that, and we're not going as far as this. So within what we're doing, I can be totally present.
Yeah, no, it's good. The eye communication, Jonas is like, now, not now, later, now. Oh my God, no. What else do I have here for you? Oh, the sex club. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. So we have a very special guest in this show.
Yes, we do.
How How do you get God Colin Mockery to come down from the heavens of improv and do a sex club scene?
Well, and it's funny because there was a moment on set where he's standing there with his ram horns and his pleather vest and skirt,
Which is discount because it's less expensive.
yeah, because it's not real leather.
Yeah.
And we were, the guys were lighting or fixing a lighting thing, and I looked at him and I was like, dude, why did you agree to do this movie? And he references his own costume and he's like, how could I not do this movie?
Right?
But Colin and I had worked together on a previous film of mine called After the Ball, and had a great time working together. So luckily I just had his phone number. And I was able to sort of call him and say, hey, man, would you do this?
Got an idea.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I think you would be great in this role. And it's really an impactful role. My wife is convinced that he's got the funniest piece in the whole movie. And it was 2 days for him. Like he had to be there for the sex club day, and then there's one other scene that he appears in.
Yeah.
And so he was like, yeah, of course I'll do it. Simple as that.
Man, I watched him on Last Comic Standing, and he was just a treat.
Oh, he's hilarious, and he's just a gem of a generous man.
Did you get a lot of him just playing?
Nope.
Stuck to the script and
stuck to the script. He's an actor first, and if you say to him, because I did this not on this movie very much, there was a little bit at the end, but. On my previous movie that we worked together on, I did a lot more where I was like, here are the lines, but when we get to this line, I want you to just make something up. And he would be like, okay, right? If you tell him these are the places where I want you to go off page and make something up, then he will, and it will be brilliant and likely better than what you wrote.
Oh, give him some ammo and it's off to the races.
Yeah.
That scene is so laugh out loud funny. Like so laugh out loud funny because she's like, Dad, aren't you like ashamed? What's Mom think of this? Well, she's right over there talking to the Wilsons or whatever the name was, right? Like it's just so off the cuff and so natural. And yeah, I love this movie, man.
I'm so glad.
I really do. All the graphics you added in, is that something like I see that as a mechanic, as a tool these days? Is that something for the youth? Is that something that helps punch it up, or is that something so that we're visually aware of what's going? Like, because some of those things are hilarious, right? Loved it when they were younger. Like the one, you don't want me to try that again, and he sticks his finger in the wrong. All these things. Is that something that isn't, because that's a new thing to me in filmmaking?
No, yeah, it was very much something that we did in the first act. I think stuff like that, it's a little gimmicky, but it makes a first act crackle more and move more quickly. And it's also as a writer, a lovely shortcut to what a character's thinking. That saves you a bunch of screen time and can be visually exciting. I mean, you'll notice that we stopped using that stuff once
it does fade.
Act,
once
right?
you get into the meat of the characters.
Once we know our characters and now we know what they're after and what they're going for, and we're a little more invested in their journeys, then I don't think we kind of need that stuff anymore, and so we don't. But yeah, I mean, it was always part of the script, and I really like how it plays into a sense that we were trying to build in the first act. That we live in a world where sex is used to advertise everything, and every magazine ad and billboard and
that's what I thought, man. I was like, this is the cover of a Vogue.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's all in some way that stuff plays on a lot of us. That, oh my God, my sex life doesn't measure up because look at and one of the titles that we wrestled with that I thought was great was the sex that everybody else is having, right?
It fits with your length.
Yeah, totally.
Title, I mean.
It was too long, right? But I love that title because the way in which it plays in the first act.
Yes.
And that these characters go through and look around at this world where they're like, oh my God, everybody else is having sex all the time and we are not.
Well, and you've made a film that when people walk out of it now, they will have you will inspire this conversation, and even if it's just a little flicker, it's going to make people look at each other and maybe not take it so seriously. Maybe be willing to have more open conversations about it. Because if this is what's happening on screen, well, this is the sex we're all having, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I hope so too. Because I mean, that's something that I think, especially as we get older, right? There's this idea that I mean, there's a store in Toronto called the Anti-Aging Store.
Huh. I wonder what they sell.
But that's the name of the store. And every time I drove by it, I was like, how about like an aging gracefully store?
Yeah.
Like why? Like, part of life is we get older and we change, and so, like, right? Why do we have to pretend that that's not happening? That's so weird.
Exactly. You get older, you get sorer, you get fatter, you get lazier, you get busier, you get more stressed. Like, as life compounds on you, and one of the easiest things to throw to the side is one's sex life, right? Like, and it's something that we don't talk. I don't talk about this with my buddies, right? This is the most sexual conversation I've ever had with another man in my life, to tell you the truth. And I'm fine with it, but like, and I'm putting this out to the masses after this, which I was thinking about this all week. I was like, I'm going to talk about sex with someone I kind of know, and about his film, and we're probably going to get into some of these topics, and I'm glad that it does, because it's made this easier.
Now, I do you remember? I'm not sure if we showed it to you. There was a scene in the film that we cut.
Okay.
I can't remember if I showed it to you or not when you came over to watch it at the test screening, where my main character, my second character, Josh, has a conversation with his male friends about their sex lives.
No, that was not in what I saw.
Right. So we had cut it by it was one of the funniest scenes in the movie. It's a little bit of an echo of the conversation that we're having right here.
Sure.
Where he's having sexual difficulties in the first act with his wife, and he's wondering about, is everyone else having more sex? Is there something wrong with me? Is it,
Yeah.
And so he's playing poker with his three buddies, and I have this dolly moving around the table and this music playing.
Oh, it's like the Quentin shot.
Yeah, and there's a moment where he's like, "Hey guys, can I ask you some questions about your sex life?" And the dolly stops and the music goes off. And his
record stops.
Yeah, and his friends are all like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Right? And so he tries to but the scene was precisely about what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
he has this conversation where he's like, do we maybe think that we don't talk about our sex lives because maybe they're not living up to the expectations that we have that are kind of societally created about what our sex lives should be? And his friends at the end of the scene, I can share you the entire scene because it's not in the movie anymore. His friends were like, "Dude, just use the equation." He's like, "What, the equation?" They're like, "Yeah, the equation. You take the number of times you're having sex now and divide it by the number of years you've been married, and then add it to," and they have this really complicated equation.
Algebraic.
Yeah. And he's like, "What?" And they're all looking at him like he's an idiot. Like, "Yeah, dude, it's simple math. The equation. For example, right now you're this age and you've been married this many years, so blah, blah, blah." And they do the equation. So you would be having sex, and they all do it in their heads, and they're like 4.1. Yeah, 4.1 times a week. That's right.
That's funny.
And it was a very funny scene. I really, really love that scene. But whenever I shoot a comedy, I always find that the funniest scene on the day never makes the movie.
Really?
Yep. I don't know what that is. When we shot My Awkward Sexual Adventure as well, there was a scene that was the funniest scene we shot in that film, did not make the final cut. I don't know why that is. It's just...
Is it because you've got something to measure against after you've done a few takes?
No, I don't know what it is, man. It's
Is it usually the first one?
No,
Like, is it the first take, or is it just the best one on that day?
It's the writing. It's not the scene itself.
Okay.
It's not the performance. It's the actual writing. So like that scene that we're talking about, as it worked out, those characters did not come back at the end of the movie, so it felt like a left field kind of observation.
Why were these guys here?
Yeah. And also, once we start to build the narrative and where we're going and our countdown and what our couple was after, it kind of felt like an aside. And so even though the scene was very funny, I really wanted to sculpt a comedy that moved like lightning and was one thing to the next and carries you through so that it's over before you know it's over and 84 minutes have passed. And so scenes like that and jokes like that and bits like that, we just took them all out.
Yeah, I could see it weighing it down, right, and be a little disjointed.
We got a great compliment from the Scottish press, the Irish press, when we were, I can't remember which, I got it all as a big...
It's on the island.
Yeah, I got it all as a big thing from my publicist. Like,
Yeah.
Here's all the press. I couldn't tell what was what. But somebody wrote about the film. They said, this is what a Judd Apatow film would feel like if Judd Apatow let his editor do his job.
That's a really big compliment.
It's a great compliment, right?
That's a huge compliment because everybody knows a Judd Apatow movie is too fucking long.
But hilarious.
But you can only laugh like laughing is a physical activity. Laughing is exerting, like for my fat ass, it's really physical. But like, you can only laugh for so long before you're aware of how much you're laughing. And that's what a Judd Apatow comedy is to me sometimes. Like funny people I really like because it's less funny and more story. But This is 40. Yeah, sure, great sex comedy, but too fucking long.
Right.
Knocked Up. Great story, all about not being ready for life when it hits you in the face. Too fucking long.
Right.
My 40-year-old virgin, too fucking long.
He actually says it in interviews. He's like, yeah, I know the movies are too long.
Well,
but...
why do you do that?
Yeah, but it was a great compliment, and it does speak to the fact that we did also take a lot of stuff out that I think is great, and I really hope that the production company does some kind of. One of the things that I'm sure you loved about DVDs when they came out, as I did, was all the extra features.
Dude, this is called special features.
So I hope that they put that stuff somewhere.
Oh God, yeah, like comedy cutting room floor stuff that like the blooper reels.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this the other day. The blooper reel from Step Brothers is one of the best blooper reels ever, and you're like, why is this not out there? And the death of physical media is exactly it. You got no place to put it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you put? You only have so much server room when you want to sell it off to a streamer after.
Yeah, you could make a website for the movie.
Yeah.
And put it on the website. But as my 15-year-old daughter says, who goes to websites?
She's kind of true. Yeah, everything is just in the cloud. It doesn't. Yeah.
It's all on social media. It's
.com.
I don't
what?
know. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone will share it. You'll see it. Who fucking cares? What's next for you? What do you got? You taking a minute on this and just enjoying it, or do you? Writing?
As you know.
I do know
because you came out to a test screening for it. I have a new film called The Burning Season.
That's so good.
And that's very kind of you. And so we're in post-production on that. Just today I was making a bunch of notes for my VFX guy and for my composer and dealing with getting a bunch of source music. Local band The Details.
You were saying before we started.
Is getting a bunch of music from them to put in the film, which I love. And at the end of next week I go to Toronto to supervise the final mix and the final color correction, and then I think we should be done.
Yeah, you're in for a treat, listener. That one was funny in a dark way.
Yeah, it's not a comedy.
Yeah, not a comedy at all. And like the twist. Yeah. No, I'm going to shut up before I fucking ruin it, and I have too much editing work to do. What are you watching? What do you and the wife watch? What are you guys watching these days?
We just saw I Like Movies at the Cinematheque, at the Dave Barber Cinematheque.
Okay.
And Chandler Levac was there to present the film. It's a great film, great new. It's winning awards everywhere, and this lovely kind of autobiographical film about. You've heard of it. I'm sure you know of it. It's a movie about working in a big video store in the noughts.
Yes.
But wanting to be a filmmaker, but it's about more. It's kind of about coming of age and what it means to be human, and like all the best comedies is very funny, but underneath it's about a whole bunch of other stuff that's really great.
You want to grow with the character as much as you want to laugh at them.
That's it, and this film brings that in spades. I just watched recently. I came across a list of the movies that got ignored this year that everyone should have embraced.
Snubs.
Yeah, but
just in general.
In general, not Oscars, just in general. And there's one that I just watched called Soft and Quiet from this. You see, you've never heard of it?
No.
From this past year.
That's the media's fucking problem. Celebrate all film.
It is. Is it the scariest movie I've ever seen? It
Really?
might be. It's not. I think it is classified as horror. It's not ghosts. It's not whatever. It's basically, it's, you know what? The film starts as some white people in a small town who are, racist. They're racist. It's Fox News talking point racist.
Okay.
The film is shot in real time in one continuous take, which at first feels like a gimmick, but then you realize when events start to happen in the film and you're like, oh God, this is horrifying, and we see where this is going, and we see how it's unstoppable where it's going. You see how the one-take, real-time device really works in the film's favor. It's a tremendous, tremendous film.
Playing out in real time, an elementary school teacher organizes a mixer of like-minded women when she encounters a woman from her past, leading to I'm going to watch it after you leave.
It's great. It's great. I mean, it's great, and when you watch it, you're like, it's everything that if you were politically a progressive or even just an anti-racist, you're like, right, well, this is what's wrong with Fox News and places where they say, no, it's okay to be a little racist. I mean,
Fox News isn't news. Fox News is a movie studio that likes to cut clips in a certain way and change the narrative.
That's, and so it's a very, very powerful film.
Interesting.
And as I say, terrifying. It may be the most terrifying film I have seen in the past, 20 years. It's terrifying.
Oh, I'm looking. I like the horror plus, the horror with a narrative, the horror with context, right? Like Barbarian was a lot of fun, and only in that, like, did you see Barbarian? Okay, it's on. Do you have Crave?
I do not have Crave.
Do you have Amazon?
I can get it.
You can get it. Okay,
I can find it.
You can find it. It starts off as an abduction movie, and slowly turns into fall of society.
Oh wow!
Incest, underground family, like just all these weird things that are not definitely in a horror movie, but with this new horror plus idea. X is another great prime example, and with storytelling and character depth, it's just not your standard slashers anymore, which is what I love. And It Follows is one of them. Have you ever heard of that one?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, see stuff like that where the premise isn't always supernatural, right? Where like violence and evil are maybe the antagonist. I don't want to ruin it for anybody if you haven't seen It Follows. The follow up to that was Smile. Smile does the exact same thing. Did you see it?
No.
Smile takes suicide and makes it the antagonist.
Oh wow.
And something happens when a suicide occurs that infects everyone else around them. And it's like, what if grief made you do things?
Right.
And when you tell me about ideas like Soft and Quiet, where it's scary but not in a horrific sense, but scary in a real life sense, oh, I'm all over that shit.
Yeah, you'll love it. I mean, love it. It's an amazing movie.
I love what it's going to do to me.
Yeah. The only other thing that I can think of that I'm watching right now, or just finished watching, because I have a 15-year-old, so I watch a lot of stuff with her that maybe would not be my first choice. Is
how's Ginny in Georgia? Just kidding.
Alice in Borderlands.
Oh man, everybody I know has been talking about that. That's that like dystopian.
So it's kind of like Squid Game.
Okay.
So I really liked Squid Game.
Yeah.
And people were like, if you like Squid Game, you'll love. Although it turns out that
great trailer voice. By the way.
Thank you. Alice in Borderlands actually came first.
Yes, it did.
Little did I know.
Yeah. It's a series, right?
It's a 2-season series.
Yeah.
And the first season is, not without flaws, to be sure. But the action sequences in it are so incredibly captivating that many nights I'd be like, I'm just going to brush my teeth and watch a little bit of this episode. And 50 minutes later, I'm still there with my toothbrush in my mouth, like locked to the screen. Like it just does not let you go. The first season. Second season is not as strong. However, I'm not wrecking anything here. With this genre, and I've made films in this genre, one film, and so I know how hard it is. It has the best ending I have ever seen for this genre. And the genre is in a sense, kind of like Squid Game, what's going on genre. Like, if you watch the trailer for Alice in Wonderlands, or you watch even the first 10 minutes of episode 1, it's quite, these guys, they're running around in Shibuya in downtown Tokyo, billions of people, because it's the famous Tokyo Scramble where people all cross. And they run into a bathroom in the Shibuya subway station, and the lights all go off, and they walk outside, and everybody's gone. They're the only people left, apparently.
That's tough to do in Tokyo.
Yeah, well, and so right away you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, and there are a lot of films in that genre. I call it the what the fuck is going on genre. Right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of a great genre. Can be horror, can be sci-fi, but it's like, what is happening here, and who's or what is orchestrated? Like, what is actually, And I like Lost is the classic TV
the
example,
polar bear
right?
on a tropical island.
Sure. And of course, those films and TV series kind of live and die in a sense by the setup and by the action, but also I judge them quite harshly by their payoff.
Sure.
Like, what is going on?
Why is this happening?
And when you explain it, man, it better be worth it. And it so rarely is. Like, I mean, Squid Game, that's one of my complaints with Squid Game. Love the show. The very end, you're like, really? That's what it was?
Kind of sawish.
Yeah.
He's in the room the entire time.
You know, I don't know, man.
And then the Americans coming in at the end were a big letdown.
Terrible.
Like,
Although
I get what we're doing, but they were bad choices.
Yeah, but a great example for people who put, South Asian actors or Mexican characters or whatever in their films, and they're white filmmakers, and they don't take the time to do them properly and to fully flush them out properly.
Yeah.
It's like they're like, whoa, what's wrong with it? You want to say, go watch Squid Game and watch the American characters.
Yes.
Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But just in reverse.
It's campy. It's disrespectful almost.
Totally. But so Alice in Borderlands, I will say, the first season is you will not be able to stop watching it. Second season is a bit of a slog, but stick it out, man, because that ending, when the payoff comes, who could beat it? I can't imagine anyone beat it. It's perfect. It's great.
Martin on the show like blazed through it.
Oh yeah,
said crazy big high praises for it. Sean has almost watched it a couple times, and I've been like, let's throw it on.
Yeah.
Like, come on, get rid of the normal shit. Let's watch some shit from the other side of the world that someone else made that we would never see here.
Here's the thing that they do that I hate, because we have a second.
Yeah, we have lots of time.
Is I lived in Japan for a number of years.
Yes,
we talked about that.
Yeah.
And so I watched when I was over there, because it was pre-internet. I watched a lot of Japanese TV and a lot of Japanese movies, and because that's where I was.
Yeah.
And our Japanese brothers and sisters have a thing that they do in their media that they really love, that doesn't translate well, which is they love to have the moment where a character stops and says, wait. And everybody does stop, and they wait, and then the character delivers a monologue, and everyone listens. It's terrible. I hate it.
It breaks the fourth wall.
Totally.
Yeah.
They love it, and they do it a lot in season 2 of Alice in Borderlands. So you got to forgive them that.
Well, and it's their cinema.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Like, it's their culture. There's enough people over there that it's in the zeitgeist, in the diaspora, it's going to come out differently.
Yeah.
Right? Just like over here. We love big action sequences with over-the-top bullshit with cars in space. Like, cars in space to us is the same thing as big monologues in the middle of action sequences to them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's what they like, and I can get by that. That's
yeah.
no problem.
There you go. If you're cool with that you are going to love this series.
I am not cool with bad production, bad lighting, bad shitty camera tricks. Mm-hmm. That stuff I'm not. In the dialogue and in the character, I can give a lot of grace and just be like, all right, fine, whatever. I can overlook that. Because the what's the saying? The parts are not the whole. Mm-hmm. Essentially, this one thing. You're really going to let that get in the way of enjoying something,
right?
So no, I'm totally down for that.
Cool. Yeah, you'll dig it.
I chewed through. I'm never doing this again. I saved all of the long movies for the Oscars over the weekend.
Oh wow!
So I chewed through Babylon, which is 3 hours and 7 minutes. Tar, which is 2 hours and 40 minutes, mm-hmm. and Fabelmans, which is 2 hours and 30 minutes, and I did it all in one 24-hour sitting.
Oh my god!
I want to go back to 1920s Hollywood. That's how I started my day. Then I wanted to be a German composer for the afternoon, and then I wanted to be Steven Spielberg by the evening. And Fabelmans is okay. Have you watched any of the big?
I watched Fabelmans. Is the only one I watched.
What did you think?
Well, it's interesting because I thought that I Like Movies.
Yeah.
Is a better version of the Fabelmans.
Okay, so it's a coming of age. I Like Movies is a coming of age tale of somebody in a movie store who
wants to be a filmmaker, and it's autobiographical. It is the Chandler Levack's story to a certain extent. And
yeah, see, with Spielberg, we've had so much Spielberg that I'm like, this is when you should have done this a lot earlier in your career, in my opinion. If this is where you wanted to tell this story,
right?
Waiting to the end and then realizing all of this is built upon this. I mean, it's tragic, right? Watching your mom cheat on your dad on camera. I mean, that's every filmmaker's fucking nightmare. But
right.
I didn't really scream for it. I loved Babylon, though.
I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait.
Oh, it's right at the turn of silent to talkies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 4 characters, a wannabe starlet, an aging out actor, a black musician in a white world, and a Mexican wanting to work in the studio executive business. And it's their rise and fall.
Oh, wow.
Over 3 hours. And as a filmmaker, you'll probably appreciate it way more because everything that happened in the 20s is still probably happening on set today.
Yes. I have it on my list, man. I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah. You just put aside an afternoon.
We watched Mulan like the
live action,
the live action Mulan,
yeah,
which has been buried. If you try and find it, you will find that you cannot find it anywhere, and with good reason. It's my daughter and I laughed all the way through it because it's such a 2-dimensional kind of ethnocentric rendering of Chinese characters, and it's just awful.
Was it Chinese made for the CPP?
No. It was made by Americans.
No, I know, but was there a slant because of them wanting global?
No, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I mean, the characters were all just very much built on. If you're sitting in Los Angeles, what's the stereotype that you have about an ancient Chinese, warrior?
Same 100-year-old stereotype that.
Yeah, let's turn that into a character and let's make all the characters that way. But one of the characters in the film, a witch, is played by Gong Li, and when I was talking to my daughter about it, I was like, "Oh, look at how far Gong Li has fallen," because she is, a great actor who did a lot of great cinema. And my daughter was like, "Really?" So this week, spring break, we've got a whole bunch of Gong Li.
Got a Gong Li film fest.
Yeah, we got Red Sorghum and To Live and Farewell My Concubine. We've got them all lined up. The Story of Kyuju to show her this week.
Can you send me a list of Asian films that I should watch? Can you curate something for me?
Yeah, it'd be a long list, man.
Yeah, no, send me your greatest hits, and I'll start putting it in my repertoire because I'm lazy sometimes, and I'm like, meh, let's just go back to what we know. And I'm always happy when I watch something that's right out of my element.
Oh, cool.
Just because I don't go into that I can see the plot coming a mile away. I wash myself of all of my expectations, and I'm like, cool, awesome. And I've always found that with cinema that's international as opposed to just North American, it never fails.
Well, I'll give you 2 right off the hop because I'm thinking of them right now.
Sure.
Oasis. It's a Korean film.
Okay.
These will both be very hard to find. And Tony Takitani, which is a Japanese film. And that one's based on a Haruki Murakami book, or short story, I think, actually, not a book. And they are incredible. They are incredible. And it's funny when last year when the Korean film won at the Oscars.
Parasite.
Right?
No, 2 years.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Parasite won. I was like, yeah, that's a great film. That's an amazing film. But
what about all the other ones?
Yeah, where have you guys been, man?
Yeah.
Koreans have been doing films of this quality for the past 20 years. This is the first time.
And I felt like such a heel when I realized how much I loved Parasite and was like, oh my God, this kind of film gets made all over the world. You're such an idiot and you're such an ignorant fuck for not realizing that. And then being like, yeah, no, they can light and shoot and camera trick all day long over there. You just have to read it.
Yeah, Train to Busan is the best zombie film ever made.
Yeah.
I challenge anyone. Fight me. Fight me.
What did you think of the greatness that happened with Everything Everywhere All at Once? Was that?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I love that film. Did it deserve to be the most awarded film in film history? I don't know about that. It's great. Not that it's not a great film. It certainly is. My feeling when I watched it was that it was a really smart film, which I love, that then at the end decided to kind of really hammer us over the head. And I was like, but nobody who needs to be hammered in the head is still watching. The rest of the film was so smart that anyone dumb enough to need that ending has already turned off the movie. And I thought that was a kind of a structural failing of the film that made it, for me, not as great as it could have been. So
you're talking about the family aspect and the mother and the daughter stuff?
Just a lot of it. It really felt like they really brought it together many, many times, and it was very spelled out. I don't know. It wasn't my thing.
I just loved an original story for once, right? I love multiverse, Marvel aside, using a multiverse idea is so smart, right? We all want to be who we are at different points in our lives. We want to go back in time and correct things. I mean, A24 is A24. I mean, not everything's a hit, but they're starting to really. They got a big infusion of cash a couple of years ago, and they really they took the CFO, I think, from the NBA, and hired him and said, "How do you make us money, and how can we do this on the regular?" And I think that's what you end up getting is The Whale and A24 and everything else.
And yeah, I mean, the thing about the film that just makes me always just very humbled by how we all see things very differently was, I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, and at the end of the film, I was like, Stephanie Sue, oh my God, who is she? That's the most incredible performance I've ever seen. She's so amazing in that film. And in the end, she got nominated for an Oscar, which is not nothing. But a lot of people were like, nah, I don't know, meh. And I was like, what? Did you see the same movie I saw? But there is a realization, I think, that we just don't see the same thing even in a performance.
She also sang the song in it too.
Didn't know that. Yeah, until she sang it at the Oscars.
Until she sang it at the Oscars, that's when I realized it. And I was like, oh, and David Byrne too. This is fairly interesting. I agree with you. The Best Picture award. I don't like saying it shouldn't have won because immediately people go, well, you must not like it. No, I love it. I thought it was
a great film.
It's a great film, but there are things about it that are not as deserving as, say, Tar was, for example. Right. Where like you get into the technical aspects of making an unbelievable picture, and then you get the goat on screen doing things, talking in languages that you're like, did you have to learn German to do this role, or is it just rolling out? Like, do you speak German naturally? Like, who are you, Kate Blanchett, right? So you get that's the argument I make is not it's not deserving. It's just maybe not as deserving as somebody else.
Yeah.
This year.
Adam Naiman, who writes, you probably know him. He's a reviewer for the National Post.
I'm not a big critic person.
Oh, really?
They're
okay.
mean to you guys.
They are mean to us sometimes.
And I can tear apart a thing like anybody. I could, but I don't like being influenced by somebody's negative opinion on a thing that's so like film critics. Come on, let's call a spade a spade. This is subjective. We all experience different things. I've even told you about things I saw in your films the first time we talked, and you were like, oh, that's interesting that you saw it that way. And I'm like, yeah, because there's not 20 of me. There's one of me. And to think a critic's voice in front of a laptop, you're shredding art, man. Like, if you realize, Seth Rogen wrote a call, or
I saw that.
You saw the interview,
yes,
right? If they just,
yes.
You cannot like a thing in a nice way, is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, going off from what I was going to say, but I mean,
sorry,
some of the people don't know about me is that I used to be a film critic.
Really?
For the CBC.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was on CBC.
Well, I read your article about how the story, in researching this, your story
about the
party. Yes.
So I used to be on CBC Radio for a year, actually. 2003 was the year.
Okay.
Reviewing films. And, when I was doing it, given my experience as a filmmaker and having been given, because reviews are bad, in my opinion, when they say, this film is, for example, a slasher, and I hate slashers, so don't go see this film. Like, that's a terrible review, right? And I kind of did some research before I took the gig and discovered that at that time, and I'm sure the number is much lower now, but at that time, the average Canadian goes to the cinema to see a film twice a year. That's it. And that was 2003, so I'm sure the number is much smaller now. So I sort of thought,
wow.
Okay, so as a reviewer, then my job is really to match,
a two-movie a year person.
Yeah, someone who's going to see a movie and it's going to be half of the movies that they see in cinema a year. Match them with a movie that they're going to like.
Yeah.
And so, every movie that I saw, you'd sort of say, okay, this is what they set out to do. Did they achieve what they set out to do? Kind of yes or no. And if you liked X, Y, and Z, you'll like this.
A, B, and C.
Yeah, but if you're looking for this or that, you're not going to like this movie. Like, I mean, because I think that's the reviewer's job, is to help you find the film without wrecking what the story of the film is.
There's no art in being a critic. There's no art in your words. You can dig as deep as you want. Like, I get prophetic on this show. I go long on stuff. I get criticized for it all the time, but that's when I get excited, right? I get excited and I start going long about film. But to shred and demean and it's like, who beat you up all the time, man? Or like, what girl didn't invite you to the party, miss? Like, who are you really angry at? Because the filmmaker you don't know, whose work that you think is shit, like, tons of us will love it, but they'll take your word for not seeing it, as opposed to my word when I go and like it, and they go, well, the critics. If the critic was like you, where they shepherded the person to see the movie and advised on it, instead of shitting on it to say that you shouldn't see it, yeah, we'd all be better fucking for it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, sometimes there were some films that I reviewed where I was like, wow, this film sets out to achieve this, and this, and does not achieve any of what they set out to achieve. So really, and I mean, if you like this particular actor, when he's mailing in a performance, that's really the only thing I can, but I would say, of course, you use the word critic and I use the word reviewer, and there is a difference there.
Yeah.
Right? And the difference that I perceive is that a reviewer assumes that you have not yet seen the movie, and a critic assumes that you have seen the movie. And so a critic is going to talk to you about a film or write about a film that they are assuming that the reader has already seen, and they're going to discuss, whereas a reviewer assumes that you haven't seen it, and they're like, you should see it or you shouldn't see it based on, whatever.
But like if you're saying that the average Canadian only sees 2 movies a year,
Yeah.
then what if they don't trip over the reviewer and they meet the critic first? Shouldn't both of them be doing the same job?
Yeah, if I was in charge of this world, let me tell you,
Yeah.
the first thing that I would do is, why do we get mangoes in February in Winnipeg? What the hell's up with that?
Dude, I'd love to keep you, but I gotta. It's getting to that point where I'm getting old, and I'm realizing things have changed, not just in my sex life.
Yeah, we all have our pills we have to take upstairs. Weeks,
Pills, get ready for work the next day, give a fuck, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm like, I can't do that at 1 a.m. anymore. Not that it's 1 a.m, listener. But thank you, man. Seriously,
Thank you.
this was a blast. Listener, you need to watch this film. You just need to watch it. End of story. You're gonna laugh. You're probably gonna shed a tear or two, because it is sweet and it's emotional. But it'll make you ask questions about yourself and your love life. And if you're lacking, Sean's movie is gonna make you have an easier time having that conversation, because you're gonna laugh along the way. If you want to reach out to this gentleman, there will be notes in the show notes, which is where the notes go. You can find him online, find all the stuff. I'll put a link down there of all your films and everything so that people can find out more about you.
Great.
And yeah, that's about it. You should subscribe to the show, listener, because that's how you end up hearing me talk to really interesting filmmakers and other people in film. That's the best part about subscribing to the show. You don't have to do it more than once. So Apple, Spotify, Google Play, whatever. We're on every single podcast platform. Hit like, follow, or subscribe, whatever it is that puts us in your inbox each week. And follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Reel Debaters Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and the Reel Debaters Podcast on Facebook. I got nothing else for you. So thank you again, sir. And watch all the movies, kids. Say bye, Sean.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies.